The first time Karen broke into my garage at 2 in the morning, I didn't even rush outside. I just sat at my kitchen table sipping coffee and watched it unfold on my security feed like some twisted sitcom rerun. What Karen didn't know was that my alarm system wasn't just loud, it automatically called the HOA emergency list she'd set up herself. At the top of that list, her husband, Greg. So, while the siren wailed and my camera zoomed in, Greg came barreling down the sidewalk in his slippers only to find his wife mid-break-in. He dragged her out by the elbow, the alarm still shrieking like applause. That was the moment I realized I hadn't just bought a modest ranch house. I'd inherited a war. I didn't come back to fight. After 22 years in the Army, most of them overseas, I thought I'd earned quiet. My father's land had shrunk over the years my brother sold off his part, and all I wanted was to tend to what was left, an old rancher with weathered siding, a red barn that creaked with secrets, and a garage that felt like the last piece of order in my life. I wasn't looking for drama, and especially not a neighborhood committee. But quiet was the one thing Karen couldn't tolerate. She met me the very first day. Clipboard in hand, smile tight enough to crack enamel, rattling off community standards like commandments. Grass no longer than 3 inches. Mailboxes aligned at 90 degrees. Garages free of unsightly storage. I hadn't even unpacked my duffel bag before she asked for HOA dues and reminded me that she was vice president, her words the face of the neighborhood. Right then, I made a mental note: never underestimate the enemy. The first weeks were tolerable. Annoying notices taped to my door, emails about unauthorized equipment in my driveway, by which she meant my dad's old tractor, and her sudden appearances whenever I so much as coiled a hose the wrong way. Irritating, but survivable. Then she broke into my garage. The garage wasn't just a place to store things. It was my sanctuary. My dad's tools, the rebuilt tractor engine, my footlocker from deployments, the filing cabinet with every important document. It was my one domain of control, and Karen, in her bathrobe clipboard tucked under her arm, tried to claim it for the HOA. When the alarm screamed and the sirens cut the night, it wasn't just trespassing. It was war. The next morning, I found a bright yellow violation notice taped to my front door, scrawled in her jagged handwriting. Improper garage security fixtures. She'd broken into my property, set off my alarm, dragged her husband into the circus, and somehow I was the problem. I laughed so hard I almost spilled my coffee, then filed the notice in a folder I labeled Karen's Greatest Hits. That folder got fat quickly. From then on, retaliation was her favorite game. Another violation, this time for a bird feeder my niece built in shop class. Encourages unsightly wildlife. I responded by buying 2 more feeders, brighter and bigger, hanging them like ornaments on the maple tree. If she wanted to nitpick, I'd give her a forest. Soon, she was in my yard with a camera snapping photos like she was uncovering a crime scene. I tried to play it cool, but the truth is I started to wonder if she'd win. One night, I sat in the garage, grease on my hands, thinking maybe I should just take the alarm down, keep the peace. Pretend she hadn't crossed every line. For a moment, I felt worn down, like maybe I was the crazy one for resisting. Maybe I was wrong to keep pushing back. That thought made me angrier than anything she'd ever done. Because if I gave in, then she was right, her rules, her control, her kingdom. And I wasn't about to surrender my home after fighting real wars just to be bullied by a clipboard. So I dug into the HOA bylaws. Buried in the fine print was my weapon: any homeowner could demand a public hearing, mandatory minutes open to all residents. If Karen wanted to twist power behind closed doors, I'd drag her obsession into the light. When word spread, neighbors I'd barely spoken to started nodding, whispering encouragement. An old man with a cane said, "About time someone stood up to her." A young mother told me Karen once tried to shut down her kid's lemonade stand. Slowly, I realized my fight wasn't just mine. It was everybody's. The night of the hearing, the clubhouse buzzed like a courtroom drama. Karen sat at the head table, eyes sharp, papers stacked high like ammunition. She slammed the gavel, declared me a violator, and gave me the floor. I stood, held up the notice, and said, "My alarm only goes off when someone breaks into my garage. The only person who's ever triggered it is you." The room chuckled. Even some board members smirked. Karen flushed, shrieked about neighborhood tranquility flipped through her papers, but then I pulled out the actual bylaws. Section 73. Subsection G. Homeowners may install private security systems as long as they don't interfere with communal infrastructure. Mine didn't. It was legal. The board president, not Karen, announced the verdict. No violation. Case closed. Applause broke out. Karen's face tightened, but she didn't back down. Afterward, Greg approached me outside, pale and exhausted. "You humiliated her," he muttered. "She won't forgive that." His eyes weren't angry. They were scared. He was right. Karen doubled down. She smashed eggs on my truck windshield in the dead of night, cut wires to my sprinkler system with garden shears, called the police with false reports of stolen tools in my garage. The officers searched, found nothing, and warned her about false claims, but each time she came back angrier. Then she crossed the line. One night, my cameras caught two men in contractor uniforms breaking into my garage, rummaging through toolboxes, crowbar in hand. And just outside the frame, Karen herself, whispering instructions like a general. I hit the panic button, sirens blared, the men bolted, and Karen chased after them. The footage was damning. This wasn't petty harassment anymore. This was criminal. The HOA president called an emergency meeting. The clubhouse overflowed with neighbors' lawn chairs dragged across the grass, murmurs like a town ready for a trial. The footage played on the projector, two men breaking in, Karen pointing, whispering, directing them. The room erupted. Gasps, curses, disbelief. Karen leapt to her feet, screaming it was doctored a smear campaign. But I had given copies to the police, to the board, to anyone who asked. The evidence was undeniable. The board voted unanimously she was stripped of her position, referred to law enforcement. She pounded the table, shrieked, "You can't do this. I am the HOA." And from the back, Mrs. Patterson, the same woman Karen once claimed nearly had a heart attack from my alarm, stood up and said, trembling, "Without you, maybe we'll finally have peace." The room applauded. For the first time, Karen had no one left to command. Two officers stepped forward, escorted her out as she screamed about conspiracies. I watched from my seat, adrenaline still burning, the crowd buzzing like a hive freed of its queen. For weeks, she'd tried to bury me with notices, sabotage, lies, even crime. She wanted me gone. Instead, she destroyed herself. And the lesson power built on fear always crumbles the moment people stop being afraid.